Hare Krishna, Namaste, Chapter 18, which is entitled as Sannyasa Yoga. Sloka 36 and 37. Sukhaṁ idānīṁ tri-vidhaṁ śṛṇu me bharatarṣabha abhyāsād ramate yatra duḥkhāntaṁ cha nigacchati yattad agre viṣamiva pariṇāme mṛtopamam tat sukhaṁ sāttvikaṁ proktam ātma-buddhi-prasāda-jam. So far, we learned about practices, sadhana, the jnana, karma, karta, and also that which is required for one to perform action are buddhi and dhriti. All these are sadhanas, which were classified under sattva-guna, rajo-guna and tamo-guna. The result that one wants to attain through this sadhana is sadhya, whether it is sattva, rajas or tamas. That end result is to obtain happiness. The happiness also classified into threefold under sattva-guna, rajo-guna and tamo-guna. We will be combining Sloka 36 and 37 together because the first half of the Sloka is an introduction of what's coming, and the second half of the 36 Sloka and 37 Sloka speaks about sāttvika sukhaṁ, happiness in the mode of goodness. 38 Sloka talks about rajasa sukhaṁ and 39 Sloka tamasa sukhaṁ. Now let's focus on 36th and 37th Sloka meaning. Bharatarṣabha, or best among the Bharata dynasty. Krishna is addressing Arjuna as Bharatarṣabha because he deserved to obtain sāttvika sukha, not the rajasa sukha or tamasa sukha. Sāttvika sukham is considered to be the highest kind among these three types of happiness. Since you, Arjuna, coming in the lineage of Bharata dynasty, and you are certainly great in this dynasty, you should try to know about Sāttvika Sukham and try to derive Sāttvika Sukham and not go running behind Rajasa Sukham and Tamasa Sukham. Sukham 2, regarding happiness, which is the important result of all the factors discussed earlier. That is, whatever we discussed earlier, jnana, karma, karta, buddhi, dhriti, is ultimately to obtain a result. That result is happiness, sukhaṁ. That sukhaṁ is classified into tri-vidhaṁ, of three kinds: sattva, rajas and tamas. Happiness in mode of goodness, happiness in mode of passion, happiness in the mode of ignorance. Idānīṁ, now, happiness also differs based on what guna it falls into from what has been discussed earlier. If jnana is sattvika, karma is sattvika, karta is sattvika, buddhi is sattvika and dhriti is sattvika, the sukham is also going to be sattvika. If jnana is rajasa, karma is rajasa, karta is rajasa, buddhi is rajasa and dhriti is rajasa, the result is going to be rajasa sukham. Likewise, if jnana is tamasa, karma is tamasa, karta is tamasa, buddhi is tamasa and dhriti is tamasa, obviously the end result is going to be tamasa sukham. Idānīṁ, me, from me, śṛṇu, hear. So this is the first half of 36 sloka. The second half of the 36 sloka continues to 37 sloka, describes or elaborates what is said to be sāttvika sukham, happiness in the mode of goodness. Abhyāsād through long practice, yatra, in which happiness, ramate, one rejoices, duḥkhāntaṁ cha, and the end of sorrow, nigacchati, one attains, duḥkhāntaṁ cha nigacchati, that is, when one comes to the end of sorrow, meaning there's no more sorrow after that, all the sorrows are perished, the sorrows of this world are perished. In other words, it is best to state that the term duḥkhāntaṁ here refers to the multitude sorrows that arising in this world of transmigration, meaning as the Atma goes through different bodies, life after life after life, and it comes to a point, duḥkhāntaṁ, end of all the sorrow, where there is no more sorrow left to suffer by taking any more birth. Yat, the joy which, agre, in the beginning of yoga, viṣam, painful like poison, pariṇāme, at the end, mṛtopamam, becomes sweet like nectar, ātma-buddhi, knowledge of the self, prasāda-jam, born of the satisfaction that is due to the clarity of tat sukhaṁ, that happiness, sāttvikaṁ proktam, is said to be sattvik. Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan translates these two verses together as, O best of Bharatas' lineage, hear from me about the three types of happiness. That happiness which brings joy and destroys sorrow with practice, which appears to be poison in the beginning but becomes nectar, which arises from purity of intellect connected to Atma, is in the mode of sattva. Sukhaṁ idānīṁ tri-vidhaṁ śṛṇu me bharatarṣabha. That is the first half of the 36th sloka, which says, O best among Bharatas, happiness is of three kinds. We wouldn't even thought there are three kinds of happiness, or happiness are categorized into three divisions. Here it is made clear that there are three types of happiness, so that we can understand the happiness that we are deriving now, or the happiness that we have now, falls under which category of these three. That happiness is of three gunas, sāttvika, rājasa and tamasa. śṛṇu me, now I shall describe them. Listen to me. By listening to me, you will understand the threefold divisions of happiness. I am explaining this to you because so that you understand what is best among these three and try to derive that happiness, not the other two. The happiness caused by experiencing the self meaning Atma, is said to be sāttvika sukhaṁ, and that happiness is achieved through continued meditation upon the self. One thing to point out here before we go deeper into the sloka is, when one meditates upon the self, it is about the jnanis who mainly focus inward towards the Atma, Jivatma, that is themselves, focusing on themselves. Where one meditates beyond the self towards Paramatma, then it mentions about bhaktas. So as we explain these set of slokas, we may freely use Atma and Paramatma. Let's keep that in mind and continue. So the self being invisible, meditation on the self will be quite difficult or even frustrating exercise. Therefore, it is said agre viṣam. It tastes like poison. But with continued practice, the intellect can perceive with more clarity the distinct nature of the self. When we continue not giving up, then things becomes more clearer. This is where the sāttvika dhriti comes into the picture. If one does not have that sāttvika dhriti, then one may give up, not continuing to do the practices. But for one to have that sāttvika dhriti, one must have sāttvika buddhi. Now we can understand the flow between these things that we have studied so far. Even though initially it may appear to be poison, when the contemplation becomes mature due to continued practice, and when it fructifies, the experience one gets is like nectar. And that practices itself becomes a source of great happiness, like a sweet nectar. That which appears to be like poison in the beginning, but ends up to be nectar, is said to be sāttvika sukhaṁ. That which appears to be nectarian in the beginning, but ends up as poison, is said to be rājasa sukhaṁ. That which is poisonous at the beginning and as well as at the end is said to be tāmasa sukhaṁ. This is the overview of these two slokas. In our next session, we'll see the details of what has been said in the second half of the 36th and the 37th sloka. Namaste. Hare Krishna.